Who's ever been to Dubai or the UAE? Show of hands. Handful of people. Let me just give you a brief summary of the history of the UAE, because that'll contextualize the field experiment, which I'm going to share with you here. So the UAE is a country which is 42 years old. Who's older than 42 in this room? So about half to two-thirds of this room is older than the entire country. Like all countries, it's an invented nation. It's the bringing together of a variety of different people. And my minister tells a story when he went to school. He went to school in a mud hut that had to close for weeks at a time because of seasonal flooding. And it's gone from a situation where when the country was founded in 1971-72, there were only 40 college graduates in the entire nation to having one of the highest graduation rates in the developed world. It leads things in terms of women's empowerment. There are more women in both local and federal government than the UK and the US combined involved in government in the UAE. It has one of the highest rates of graduation from high school to completion of college, both certainly in the region and in the developed world. So it's very much a country and a society and an economy in overdrive. And it's very forward-looking to the degree that because the rate of change is so fast and because the people who have lived through the last 40 years have experienced this tremendous change in their lifetime, the realization is very visceral and present that these changes are real and are going to occur. And so therefore, the notion of the future embedded in the decisions that we make today is quite material. So I wanted to share one example of a project which we did there, which I think is an example of taking the future and living it today in terms of some of the things that we've spoken about. We, with the Institute for the Future, so IFTF, I think is one of the first governance lab exercises, ran this foresight engine game on connected citizens. And because I'm a friend of Jake's and knew this was happening, I was like, okay, guys, let's get a bunch of participation from the office and from the region there. So this is a map which just shows where participants from this game came from, and this is Dubai. So you see lots in San Francisco, some in Finland, I think, lots in London, a bit in Singapore, a bit in Sydney, and a lot from the region. Now this was quite cool, and because this was something that was being run, we had a lot of players, a lot of ideas was being run independently. I was able to generate interest within the office for something which was a little bit scary and radical. The idea of crowdsourcing thousands of people's decisions about the future of government, you could imagine is a little bit sensitive in the region. Because this was something that was done independently with some partners, and then because it went so well and was so interesting, we were able to say, okay, great, let's sponsor a report and see how this might apply to us. So we commissioned this report, Future of Government Services report, that was debuted at a huge governance conference in Dubai recently. And the kind of findings of these won't surprise you. I'm not going to belabor these, but the idea that automation and virtualization are going to increase, and that's going to basically render most government bureaucracies 10% of their current size in the future. That means physical interaction and face-to-face humanity is going to become even more important in a world of big data. The idea that citizens and public services will come from a variety of different sources, that government's job will become more of a moderating role in this platform is quite interesting. And these dilemmas, which we've already heard so much about, are going to continue to persist. Now, these are ideas which are quite relevant globally and certainly have a lot of resonance in Dubai, in the UAE. And I want to tell you that what I want to mostly focus on here is not these concepts and these trends, but how this is being applied in the context of a fast-moving government that, like many governments, is quite risk-averse at the same time as being quite concerned about the future. So from this, we extracted one policy prototype, which we're developing now. There's this concept of Emiratization. Almost 98% of all national citizens in the UAE work for the government. They get paid roughly 3 times that of the private sector. The hours are quite nice. And the government, being forward-looking, realizes that its primary job is to provide for its people, but that this is an unsustainable financial model going forward in the future, mainly because GDP, although there's a lot of it now, is so intimately connected to oil price. Right? So there's a high degree of volatility at the national level, even though Dubai's economy is only 2% oil-based. It's mostly trades and services. So this notion that looking forward, we're not going to be able to afford to support all of our people through government jobs, how can we Emiratize the private sector? And there's a lot of initiatives here which haven't really worked. This has been an issue for over a decade. And so we said, okay, great, coming from this idea that in the future services will be coming from a variety of different people, mediated and moderated over the web, why don't we prototype a policy right now that is indicative of how that might actually occur? So the idea is that young people, particularly, there are, for a variety of reasons, very well-educated women working at home, women staying at home who aren't able to go into the workforce for a variety of reasons, so we can provide public services there. So the point here, there's this great phrase, danger and possibility are sisters. If I were to go forward to the government and say, hey, we're going to run this massive crowdsourcing game where anyone in the world can comment on the future of government services, are you interested? I would have been fired. But instead, because we were able to pick up on existing waves of interest, to partner with folks like the IFTF, we were able to in a way, do this edge work or this crack work, insinuating this into the public consciousness in a way that was so productive it never would have been able to be there in the first place. So baby steps, but in bold directions.